There is something deeply intriguing about people who, in the midst of a world that idealizes motherhood and fatherhood as the pinnacle of human achievement, bluntly confess, "I don't like children." The phrase almost sounds like a social heresy, a taboo so closely guarded that, when uttered, it generates looks of astonishment, sighs of disapproval, or even nervous laughter, as if the interlocutor had just admitted a crime against human nature. After all, in a culture that romanticizes childhood as synonymous with purity and celebrates the family as the sacred core of existence, how dare anyone not be enchanted by those little beings with sharp laughs and bright eyes? Before you judge or jump to the conclusion that these are cold, selfish, or emotionally defective people, you need to understand an uncomfortable truth. There is nothing abnormal about not feeling affinity for children. Just as not everyone likes coffee, the beach, or classical music, connection with the childhood universe is not a biological obligation, much less a test of humanity. Some just aren't attracted to that kind of interaction, and that doesn't make them monsters. But behind this preference, or lack thereof, hides a tangle of experiences, personality traits, and even scars that few people are willing to examine. Maybe it all started in childhood itself. Imagine the child who, instead of playing and cuddling, received embarrassing silences, screams, or the pure and simple absence of the adults who were supposed to protect him. The brain, at that moment, may have registered a cruel lesson. Children are synonymous with chaos, pain, or abandonment. Years later, the adult this child has become looks at a crying baby and feels not tenderness, but a distant echo of his own helplessness. Or perhaps it was the opposite, a childhood so hyperprotected, so suffocated by expectations, that the idea of living with another child, with their incessant demands, their fragility, their absolute dependence, awakens not nostalgia, but an instinct for escape. I've already experienced this. I don't want to repeat it. Other times, aversion is not born from trauma, but from a deep incompatibility with what society demands of adults in relation to children. Highly rational people, for example, may feel exhausted by childish irrationality, the lack of logic, the tantrums for no apparent reason, the constant need for attention. For them, interacting with a child is like trying to solve a puzzle whose pieces change shape every minute. Extreme introverts, on the other hand, may see the chaotic energy of children as an unbearable invasion of their own mental space. It's not hate, it's early exhaustion. I need silence to recharge. Children are the opposite of that. And there are still those for whom rejection is, in fact, a form of self-protection. Women who, after years of being told that their biological clock is ticking, discover that the idea of having a child fills them not with joy but with panic. Men who, raised to be providers, see fatherhood as a trap of responsibilities that they do not feel capable of. For them, admitting that they don't like children is, first and foremost, a way of being honest with themselves and of avoiding making what they would consider the biggest mistake, bringing a life into the world out of obligation, not out of desire. "I'd rather be called selfish than an absent father," a friend once confessed to me, with a sincerity that hurt more than any judgment. But it would be naive to reduce everything to traumas or incompatibilities. In some cases, the lack of affinity with children reveals a radically different philosophy of life. They are people who see humanity not through the prism of continuity, the idea that we must reproduce to leave a legacy, but through the intensity of the present. For them, happiness is not in creating something that survives after death, but in living so fully that existence itself becomes a work of art. Why have children when I can adopt dogs, travel the world, or create something that changes the lives of strangers? They ask. It is not a refusal of life. It is a redefinition of what it means to make sense of it. Of course, there are also cases where aversion hides something darker, the fear of not measuring up. In a society that glorifies parenting, admitting that you don't feel prepared to raise a child is almost like confessing a moral failure. So some people build a wall of indifference, or even hostility, like a shield. If I don't like it, I don't need to try. If I don't try, I don't fail. The problem is that, in this process, they also close themselves off from experiences that, in other circumstances, could be enriching. A child, after all, can be exhausting, but they are also the only human being capable of teaching us to see the world with new eyes. If you have recognized yourself so far, no, you are not a monster. He is not defective, Nor does he deserve to be treated as a pariah for not sharing the collective enthusiasm for childhood. Your relationship with children, or lack thereof, does not define your value. What defines you are the choices you make based on this awareness. Maybe you will never be the uncle who plays on the floor, the godmother who organizes parties, or the father who teaches how to ride a bike. But it could be the person who listens to a teenager when no one else does, who donates time to causes that save children's lives, or who simply lives their own life with an authenticity that inspires others to do the same. At the end of the day, liking children or not is not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of how you choose to love. Some love creating. Others love protecting. There are those who love teaching, those who love giving, those who love simply existing so intensely that their very presence becomes a beacon. And if society insists on measuring humanity by the ability to be enchanted by a baby's laughter, perhaps it's because it hasn't yet learned that there are 1,000 ways of being human and that none of them are less valid for not following the script. So, the next time someone asks you, with that tone of veiled disapproval, "What do you mean, you don't like children?" you can respond calmly, "I like other things." And that doesn't make me any less well-rounded. Because, deep down, true maturity is not in loving what everyone else loves, but in having the courage to love what makes sense to you, even if that simply means loving yourself enough to not force yourself to be someone you're not. If this text made sense to you, comment, how do you deal with this issue? Share with those who need to hear that they are not alone. And if you want more reflections like this, stay here, because life is full of taboos that deserve to be discussed. Until next time. Oh, and remember, your way of existing in the world is contribution enough. The art of not belonging, and why it's a superpower. There is a kind of quiet heresy in admitting that we don't fit in. Not in groups, not in traditions, not even in the most basic expectations of what should make us happy. Society has a ready-made script: get married, have children, celebrate dates, follow linear careers, smile in photos. And when someone says no thanks to that script, the world treats it as if it were a factory defect, not a choice. But what if not belonging is not a failure, but a form of resistance? A refusal to wear masks that don't fit your face? Think of the people who don't feel homesick, not because of a lack of love, but because the whole world is their home. Or those who don't cry at funerals, not because of the cold, but because they honor the pain in silence, away from the eyes that judge the intensity of the mourning by the volume of the tears. There are those who don't miss friends, not because of loneliness, but because their own company is a feast. And there are those who don't dream of. He is a romantic, not out of bitterness, but because he discovered that affection can be a garden, not a single rose bush. We call this outside the standard, as if the standard wasn't just the average of what the majority accepted without question. The myth of normality, or why you're not a mistake. From an early age, we learn that existing is performing. A child who doesn't like hugs is cold. An adult who doesn't want children is selfish. Anyone who doesn't get excited about promotions at work is unmotivated. As if life were a multiple-choice test and only one answer was right. But the truth is that normality is a statistical illusion. An imaginary line drawn down the middle of a graph, where half the people are on one side and the other half are on the other. You are not off the chart. You are the one who helps design it. The problem is not fitting in. The problem is that we have been taught that fitting in is more important than being. The science behind not belonging. Studies in psychology show that people who reject social norms often have greater creativity. The brain is not tied to pre-approved standards. Emotional resilience, less dependence on external validation. Divergent intelligence, ability to see solutions where others see problems. Not surprisingly, many geniuses, artists and revolutionaries were, and are, social outsiders. Van Gogh sold one painting a year. Emily Dickinson published 4 poems during her lifetime. Alan Turing, father of computing, was considered weird by his colleagues. The world calls madness what it still doesn't understand. But be careful, not belonging is not synonymous with superiority. It's just the courage to say, this isn't for me, without needing to justify it. The price, and privilege, of being different. Of course, there is a cost. Those who leave the queue are always noticed. You will be called difficult, complicated, too much. There will be those who try to fix you, as if you were a faulty appliance. You'll change your mind, it's just a phase, one day you'll understand. But here's the secret: anyone who insists on fixing you is because they can't stand the idea that there are other ways of working. And that's where the privilege lies. Because when you stop apologizing for who you are, two things happen. 1. You attract people who vibrate at your same frequency, even if they are few. 2. You give others permission to free themselves too, even if they never have the courage to admit it. How to survive and flourish outside the box. If you have recognized yourself so far, some strategies can help. Heavy checkmark: transform loneliness into sovereignty. It's not no one understands me, it's I don't need someone to understand me to be happy. The difference is subtle but powerful. Heavy checkmark: create your own rituals. Don't like Christmas? Make December 25th a day of silence and self-knowledge. Hate birthdays? Celebrate the small victories of the year instead of the date. The rules are yours. Heavy checkmark: find your tribe, even if it's a tribe of one. Sometimes all it takes is one person to look at you and say, "Me too." This could be a friend, a book, an online community. You are not alone, you are selective. Heavy checkmark: use discomfort as a compass. When they feel like you are too much or not enough, ask yourself, is this about me, or about their fear of being free too? Heavy checkmark: remember, history is written by those who dared to be different. Every revolutionary movement started with someone saying, "Why do we have to do it like this?" The last question, and the answer you already know. If you've made it this far, you've probably already asked yourself, am I wrong for not being like the others? The answer is no. But not because you are special, although you are, but because there is no universal right one. There is just the right one for you. And if today you feel strange, out of place, or simply tired of pretending, know that this is not a failure. It's a sign that you're truly alive, not just surviving as expected. Aliens. Now tell me. Black right arrow: what have you stopped doing, or being, just to fit in? Black right arrow: when was the first time you allowed yourself to say it's not for me? Share this text with anyone who needs to hear that they are not alone. And if you want more reflections like this, save this profile, because life is too short to live half-heartedly. Until next time. Oh, and remember, the world needs people who don't fit into boxes. He just doesn't know it yet. Milky Way. What if the freedom that scares them so much is a mirror of what you could be too if you dared? The fear that has no name, but everyone recognizes. Have you ever noticed how certain people bother you without doing anything? They are not those who shout, those who challenge, or those who break rules. They are those who simply live as if the rules did not exist for them. They don't ask permission to be happy. They don't justify their choices. They don't apologize for taking up space. And it is precisely this absence of guilt that makes the system tremble. Because, deep down, what scares the most isn't their rebellion, it's our obedience. The "that's better" conspiracy. From an early age, we are taught to choose between two boxes. Box 1, be like everyone else. It's safer. Box 2, be different, but not too different. And here comes the complete package. Heavy checkmark: get a stable job, even if it suffocates your soul. Heavy checkmark: get married, have children, even if love doesn't fit that mold. Heavy checkmark: be happy, but not too happy, otherwise it makes you jealous. Until one day you look back and realize, you are not living. You're just filling out a form called life. What about the people who tear up this form? These became targets. Not because they are worse. Because they are living proof that the cage has a door. What they don't tell you about those who don't fit in. 1. They are not courageous all the time, they just learned that the fear of living is worse than the fear of making mistakes. 2. They are not selfish, they just understand that saving others cannot be at the cost of sinking themselves. 3. They are not lucky, they created luck by stopping waiting for permission. And here's the truth that hurts. The world does not punish those who step out of line. Punishes anyone who makes others realize that the line is an illusion. The question you avoid asking yourself. What if I could too? No, it's not about dropping everything and becoming a digital nomad, unless you want to. It's about stopping apologizing for existing. Stop saying I'm very intense, sensitive, ambitious, quiet. Stop thinking that happiness is a prize that you need to deserve. Stop waiting for the world to approve your choices before making them. Because here's the dirty secret. No one is watching you as much as you think they are. And even if they were, so what? The forbidden exercise: do it in secret. Take a piece of paper and write. 1. Something you do just to please others, and that, deep down, consumes you. 2. Something you stopped doing for fear of what people would think. 3. A version of you that only exists when no one is looking. Now look at this list and ask, if I died tomorrow, which of these 3 things would I most regret not having lived through? Spoiler, the answer is not a secret. You already know. The invitation, that you can refuse. Or not. Today, do one thing, just one, that the approved version of you would never do. Could it be saying no without explaining? Wearing clothes that don't suit your age? Delete a WhatsApp group that only gives you anxiety? Buy the book ticket course that you have been putting off for months? It's not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to be afraid. For those still in the audience, but want to jump on stage. If you've read this far and felt that tightness in your chest, that's me, but I can't, no. Fear is not a signal to stop. It's a map. It points exactly where you need to go. What about the people you envy? They were not born without fear. They just decided that freedom was worth the battle. The last thing, you have to close this tab. Save this text. Not for me, for you a year from now, when you're doubting again. And when someone calls you different, with that disdainful tone, smile and think, yes. And that's why they can't imitate me. Share this with anyone who needs to hear it. Keep it for yourself if you need to remember. And, above all, go. The world already has too many people waiting for permission. It needs you, all of it. Fire. Fear is a GPS with the voice of your past, but you can reprogram it. Have you ever noticed how certain decisions, the ones we know we should make, are accompanied by a sinking feeling in your stomach, a ringing in your ears, or even a sarcastic little voice in your head? Who do you think you are? This isn't for you. What if it goes wrong? Here's the truth no one tells you. This fear is not yours. It's an echo, a scratched record of messages you've internalized throughout your life. The teacher who said you weren't good at math. The boss who turned up his nose when you suggested an idea. That relative who repeated, "In our family, no one can do that." But here's the catch. Fear only has power over what you haven't done yet. Think about it. You've already driven a car at 100 kilometers per hour, you've cooked a dish from scratch, you've already learned how to use a smartphone. At some point, all of these things were uncharted territory, and yet, you crossed the line of fear without even realizing it. Why? Because fear only survives in theory. In practice, it evaporates or, at the very least, becomes smaller than you. The 5-second rule, no one teach you right. Mel Robbins, the creator of the famous 5-second rule, discovered something revolutionary. The brain has a 5-second interval between an impulse and the activation of the fear autopilot. If you don't act in this interval, fear takes over. But here's what she doesn't tell you. These 5 seconds are not just for acting, they are for remembering. When you feel that first sign of resistance, the heavy body, the rapid breathing, the mind making excuses, count 5-4-3-2-1 and do 2 things. 1. Ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen if I did this? Hint, 99% of the time, the answer is, nothing I can't handle. 2. Remember a time when you overcame a similar fear. The brain doesn't distinguish well between memory and reality. If you relive a past victory, it will think, oh, I've done that before. I can do it again. Practical example. Fear, I can't ask for that raise. 5 seconds, what's the worst thing? Him saying no. So what? I've heard no before and survived. I remember when I asked for that promotion 3 years ago and, even though I didn't get it, I ended up getting a better project. Action, open your mouth and ask. The secret of people who seem fearless, spoiler, they are. That friend of yours who travels alone, that colleague who changes careers like changing shirts, That artist who posts his work without shame, they were not born without fear. They simply trained a skill that you can also develop. The art of tolerating discomfort. Research shows that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. And like any muscle, it needs to be trained. Start small. Today, talk to a stranger at the cafe, even if it's just to ask for the time. Tomorrow, post a photo without filtering 100 times. This week, say no to a commitment you don't want without making excuses. Every small victory rewrites the code of your fear. Over time, you'll realize that discomfort isn't a sign of danger, it's a sign of growth. The approved version trap, and how to get out of it. Society loves little boxes. You're the kind of person who, people like you don't do that, that doesn't suit your personality. But here's the bomb. Your personality is not a signed contract. It's a draft, and you're allowed to scribble, cross out, and rewrite as many times as you want. The problem is not being afraid. The problem is confusing fear with identity. I'm anxious, I feel anxiety, but I'm not it. I'm shy, I feel insecure in some situations, but I can act anyway. I'm not good at this, I haven't practiced enough yet. Replace the I am with the I am. Because am is a prison. I'm is a revolving door, you can come and go as you please. The day you stopped asking for permission. Imagine the following scene. You are at a party. Someone asks, who wants to dance? Everyone looks at the floor. You want to dance, but you stay still. Until, suddenly, a person gets up and goes. Not the best dancer. Not the most confident. But she will. And then, as if by magic, other people start to stand up too. That's not luck. It's emotional physics. Action breeds courage, which breeds more action. The world is not expecting you to be perfect. It's waiting for you to start. Because whoever starts, inspires. And those who inspire, change the game first for themselves, then for others. Your mission, if you decide to accept. Pick one thing, just one, that your approved version would never do. It doesn't have to be grand. Could it be? Send that message you've been putting off for weeks. Wear clothes that you think are too much for your everyday life. Speaking in public without rehearsing 100 times. Delete the contacts that only sucked your energy. Buy a ticket to that place you dream of visiting. And when fear appears, because it will, remember. You are not fighting fear. You are training your courage. And courage, my friend, is like muscle. It hurts at first. It gets easier with practice. Change your attitude towards life. The last question, before you close this tab. A year from now, you will remember this moment. You will remember that there was a day when you had the chance to choose. Remain in the audience, cheering for others, but always asking yourself, what if it were me? Or jumping on stage, even though you're shaking, even without knowing all the steps, knowing that magic happens when we stop rehearsing and start living. Which version of you will be grateful 365 days from now? Save this, for when you forget. Save this text. Not for me, for the you of the future, who will need to remember that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that some things are more important than fear. And when someone calls you crazy for daring to be different, smile and think. They're right. I'm crazy enough to believe I deserve more than a life in safe mode. Share with those who need to hear. Keep it for yourself if you need to remember. And, above all, go. The world already has too many people waiting for the perfect moment. He needs you now, whole, fears and all. Fire your turn.